I'm Barbara Evans from University of Houston, and I'm going to report on the ELSI, or Ethical, Legal, and Social Issues Group. And I'm speaking on behalf of the co-chair, who's our ethics lead, Jonathan Moreno, who had to depart for Washington earlier. We had 12 ELSI interested people in our group today, plus we know others who were unable to attend. And one of the things we discussed is the need in this effort to have the ELSI group become more inclusive, both of members of the public, because we've made these broad claims about public engagement, and then also to have a more international view of ethics, because the nations represented in this process include many nations that have their own distinct ethics communities. Now, one thing we thought of is that we really salute the way this project has sought early involvement of ethicists, including this year's meeting and last year's meeting. One of the complexities of that early involvement is that it's hard to define the ethics agenda really concretely when the scope of the science projects is still being set. And yet we think in balance we're glad to have been involved early, even though it means it's going to take a little bit of navigating what the specific ELSI issues will be. Two aspects of ethics need to be recognized. One is ELSI scholarly research, thinking about the social implications and the ethical implications from a scholarly point of view. There's also a very important part of ethics work that is ethics governance, things like making sure projects are selected with a view to ethics, and that the research as it is conducted is ethically compliant. For that, we feel a very strong need that the ELSI group needs to have close interface with the other working groups of the project, such as the communications group for public engagement, the governance group, the policy groups, the IP group. So I think one resolution we had is that it's really important that the ethics effort not be siloed, and we need to really reach out and stay in very close contact with all these other working groups that are working in parallel. We also recognize that the specific ethical issues that the science will raise depends on both the scientific nature of the work. Was it agricultural endpoints or human xenotransplantation endpoints? So the science matters, the funding source matters, because some funding agencies such as NIH or NSF will have their ethical requirements. It also matters the jurisdiction, because different laws affect the ethical analysis, and the institutional setting. There is an implicit ethics procedure that happens when research is in a large academic institution that may not be present when it's a citizen science project, and that there needs to be some analysis at the project level of what is kind of a floor level of commitment that any project undertaken under this rubric would observe. Now, in terms of how we get to the next step, we've been talking in very large terms. We think it would be really useful for the ELSI interested working group to do a white paper in the fairly near future to try to just say there's been a lot of relevant ethics work done in other contexts, such as the Human Genome Project. Where does the debate stand today? Are there gaps that will need to be addressed? And start trying to identify what the agenda is. And then also, we think there's an important first issue of what do we mean by the term human genome synthesis. It's hard sometimes to see how some of the work that's working with other species may be relevant to the efforts on humans, and to have a really clear definition of what do we mean and what would be the points where ethical concerns do attach. And finally, for a big sustained ethics research effort, obviously some sustainable funding would be needed. So by identifying more concretely what the problems are, I think that would help direct how to create a more sustainable basis for the ethics work. Thank you very much.